The walk round Digley starts at the northern car park. Here, information board shows two separate walks. There is the most popular short walk following the shoreline of the reservoir, marked with double dots, and there is a much longer walk between 4 and 5 miles, which takes you up onto the moors at Goodbent. Satellite image provided by Google Earth also shows quite clearly the route of the moor walk from the reservoir up onto the moors and back again. The walk is also shown quite clearly on the OS Explorer map number 288. The walk starts in the northern car park and it follows the same route as the shorter circular walk on its first stage. Leaving the car park, you follow the footpath along the slope of the reservoir as far as Bilberry. Just before reaching Bilberry, there's a rather unexpected sight on the footpath, two rather splendid stone gateposts. This marks what was once the entrance to Hubram House, a rather splendid mansion overlooking Bilberry Reservoir and the Digley Valley. This was demolished in the 1930s, along with the mills in the Digley Valley in preparation for the new reservoir. Now, this photograph, probably from the late 19th or early 20th century, shows the Greenwood family posing in front of Hubram House. And here is the entry into the 1901 census for the family. And just these few bottom steps remain where we saw in the family photograph them all gathered. At Bilberry, the path splits. On the left-hand side, it goes downhill to the dam and continues the short circular walk, whilst the top path leads us up onto the moors towards our final destination of Goodbent Lodge. From this top path, there is a very good view of Bilberry Dam, and behind it, Bilberry Reservoir, dating from the early 19th century. And then, in front of Bilberry Dam, the much later Digley Reservoir, constructed in the 1950s. Bilberry Dam was, of course, the scene of one of the great catastrophes in the Holme Valley in the 19th century, when the wall collapsed, sending a tsunami of water down the valley, causing widespread loss of life and destruction. There were no photographs in this era, but the Illustrated London News provided a series of very graphic images of the damage and the toll of this catastrophe. "81 people would lose their lives, and the village of Hinchliffe Mill was particularly badly struck when a row of cottages was demolished by the water, causing the drowning of some 40 or 41 residents there. This large image of the catastrophe in the valley was produced at the time in order to try to raise money to support those whose lives had been wrecked by the disaster. It sold for 2 shillings and sixpence. One unexpected side effect of the flood disaster was the number of tourists that were attracted to come and see the catastrophe, perhaps the first example of disaster tourism, made possible by the arrival of the railway. Holmfirth station had been opened just 2 years before the flood, and there are reports that the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway organised excursion trains from all over the north of England to bring visitors to the town. One train was said to have 22 carriages and needed 2 locomotives to pull it. There must have been more visitors in Holmfirth than victims of the flood. These are perhaps some of the first summer wine tourists in Holmfirth, seen on the Illustrated London News images. Gentlemen with their top hats and smart suits, and their ladies in elegant dresses, looking rather out of place amid the mess and the chaos. From Bilberry, the route continues westwards along a well-surfaced level path towards Goodbent, passing on the way several former farmsteads, shut down probably in order to preserve the quality of the water in the new reservoir. Looking across Marsden Clough, we can clearly see the first half of the route as it follows Nether Lane up onto the moors, passing eventually Goodbent Lodge. The lodge itself is used mainly during the grouse shooting season, and a few yards farther on there is a stile over the stone wall which leads to a path dropping steeply down to Blackpool Bridge on the Marsden Clough. Where the wooden footbridge now crosses the Marsden Beck, there was once a stone bridge, for this was once the main route from Holme to reach the hunting lodge at Goodbent. And here we see the original stone Blackpool Bridge, now replaced by the wooden footbridge. The name Blackpool Bridge has no connection with the seaside resort. It refers to a black pool of water which once gathered there. From Blackpool Bridge, the route climbs steeply up onto Goodbent Moor, and then on a long level section reaches Stopes Moor, passing on the way the grouse shooting butts. On this section, a small part of the gas pipeline is revealed, following its route deep beneath the moorland towards the west. After crossing Stopes Moor, the path then turns left onto the long straight section towards Holme known as Issues Road. From Issues Road there is a panoramic view over the whole area covered by this long and enjoyable walk. And eventually, leaving the moorland, we once again reach the cultivated land reclaimed from the moors, where the sheep may safely graze, and not long later the first glimpse of Digley appears. Digley Reservoir was built in the 1950s, and lost now beneath its deep waters are the remains of several mills and cottages which once occupied the valley bottom here. Walking the route from Digley up to Goodbent today shows that the northern slope of the valley is now totally depopulated. But the 1854 Ordnance Survey map shows many farms and cottages, and the 1901 census names almost 200 people living here, earning a living as farmers and weavers. The final section of the walk, where it leaves Issues Road near Mill Hill Farm to follow a path down to the reservoir, is probably best avoided. It is the only part of the walk which is in very poor condition underfoot, wet, slippery and very rough. There is an alternative route. Continue along Issues Road till you reach Holme, and then in the village of Holme follow the road back to the reservoir, crossing the reservoir on its embankment. The work started on Digley Reservoir in the 1930s, but it was interrupted by the outbreak of the Second World War, and it wasn't until the 1950s that eventually the dam wall was constructed, as we see here in these images from the period. Cross the reservoir on the dam wall to the far end, turn left, and it's but a short walk back to the starting point at the northern car park. This 1856 Ordnance Survey map shows that most of our route of our walk was already in situ a century before Digley Reservoir was built. It also provides us with the names of the farms on the route a century ago, many of which have now disappeared or are in a state of ruin. Goodbent Lodge itself does not yet appear to have been built. Along most of its length, this walk is on fairly level ground, and underfoot the tracks and footpaths are generally in good condition. The exception is where the path drops steeply down to Blackpool Bridge to cross the Marsden Beck, and then on the other side of the bridge climbs steeply up onto Goodbent Moor. The poor quality of the last few hundred yards has already been mentioned. Taking time out on this walk to stand and stare, admire the view, or listen to the curlews and lapwings should result in a total walk time of between 2.5 and 3 hours. For those with no car, you could do the walk in the reverse direction by catching the bus to Holme Village, and it's but a short walk from the bus stop to the start of Issues Road.